Come on, Rumble. Give it to me, baby. Oh, well, forget you. All right. And boom, here we go. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here, you beautiful, beautiful souls on this Tuesday evening. Yes, this is a Jaybefaunt special. Welcome. Come on in. I hope you guys have your snacks. I hope you guys have your drinks. I hope you have your bowls too. We're going to be having a great conversation. Going to be covering the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, along with a response to the debates by Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party. So we'll be covering that. Just to let you guys know, if you guys have not already, the Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. So you can find me there on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern for the JB show, and then Thursdays at 5 p.m. for the Sabby and JB show. Now, if you guys have not already, go ahead and give this like to the stream. This helps me out. Thank you so very much. Shout out to all the patrons. Shout out to all the people that is watching right now. And good to see all of you here. By the way, I will be having a guest, so I want to get to him right now. So what are we talking about this evening? We're going to be getting into it. We're going to be talking about and debunking some things during the debates. So that's going to be a wonderful conversation that we're going to have. You see me in the middle. I'm looking at these people like, oh, Lord. So guess what? We're going to get into this. I would like to introduce my guest joining me for this. The brother from another mother, Katie Lewis, is joining me right now. Bringing the heat, Katie.
Hey, what's up, James? And howdy to the comrades in the chat. Happy to be here, brother.
Yep, definitely. Good to see everybody who's watching right now. Look, all of you guys who are watching right now, we have many people joining in. We have Serena talking about that there's just going to be lies. What we always know. And you know the song that goes through my head is, why you always lying? Why we always lying? Look, this is exactly what we're going to see. But why are you watching us? Is because you want it to be debunked. We're going to tell you the truth. And so we know that they aren't. So it says, what's the point of debates when one, moderators aren't going to call out lying, and two, they have almost the same damn platform. Yep. In fact, Sabs is actually live right now too. She actually pointed that out, that a lot of Kamala Harris's platform is very similar to Donald Trump's. So what's the difference? And I've been like, okay, so when somebody says that they are different, Katie, does that now, looking at the platforms and how they mirror each other, does that now kind of negate that, oh my God, one's better than the other?
It should. It won't. To a lot of these people who are stuck in voting for duopoly, it comes down to rhetoric and aura or vibes. I can't think of a better word than that. It's just how these people make these people feel. And their platforms are very not that different, but they give off different types of energy. They attract different groups just solely off of what they say. And it's unfortunate that has worked for so long.
Yeah, it feels like when people like me say that the duopoly really, they shake hands with each other. One thing I notice especially is when you have Democrats and Republicans, when something's bipartisan, it's usually for the benefit of the big corporations. Mm-hmm. It's never really ever for the benefit of us working people, the working class or the working poor. By the way, they always say the middle class. They never say the working class or the working poor. Yep. And so when it comes to what they do actually get done together, I think you're going to see a lot of bipartisanship tonight and agreement when it comes to different policies. In fact, I think you're going to see people like Kamala Harris and Donald Trump try to one up in each other when it comes to austerity, when it comes to war, when it comes to these different. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying immigration. They're going to try to outright each other on that too.
Yeah, it's really a race to the bottom that we see. And my question is like, each one is going to try to be tougher. And there's always this trend that I always see is that people say, oh, well, they have to move to the center. They have to move to the center. And it's like, then that means your standards, your principles that you set out during the primary were never actually your principles. You just set it to get the people to vote for you during the primaries. The non-existent primary, to be honest with you, that never actually happened.
And that move to the center only applies to the Democratic Party. No one ever expects a Republican to move to the center, but Democrats will move toward the right because they want that stuff to happen. Like, regardless of who's in charge, a Republican wish list has a better chance of getting through than any of these good things that Democrats claim they say they're for. So it's only Democrats that do this move to the center type of thing.
Absolutely. Shout out to Tim Price, part of the Orlando chapter for RBN. Good to see you in the chat. Brother. So one of the things that you said he got a camera for you. Nice. Cool.
Oh, appreciate that, because this is terrible. I look orange.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You're not as orange as Donald Trump. But one of the things that I also am heartened to hear your perspective. What is your expectation? So we know there's going to be a lot of lies. There's going to be a lot of misconstruing. We know this is going to happen, but my question is on how bad do you see it being, or who do you expect to essentially win this debate? Do you expect it to be more on a Donald Trump win or a Kamala Harris win, or kind of like a stalemate?
I do think with Trump having more charisma naturally than Kamala Harris would probably give him a better sense of this. Oh, he won the debate. That's how I see it. But they're both going to be pretty terrible.
Tim Price says Joe Stein, because those two will be awful. So yeah. And you know what's funny? I think at this rate, because they're so terrible, I think the Green Party is actually going to have a win tonight. I think two groups are going to win. Third parties are going to win tonight, and General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, they're going to win because they're going to win either way. Mm-hmm. But I think Green Party, well, for the most part, third parties are going to win. So good to see all the people here and accounted for. Just let me check. I'm just checking to see. All right. Oh, and I also wanted to share this as well. Speaking of winning, shout out to Sabiha of the Orlando chapter for RBN. Sabiha shared this article that I would like to also share, because one of the things that I think is going to come up is the genocide in Gaza. And a lot of people especially who are Muslim, are paying keen attention to what's going on. And so this is from CARE. It says CARE swing state data shows Muslim voters hold diverse preferences still up for grabs in 2024. And let me enlarge this so that everybody can read this. It says the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, The nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization today released additional results from its August 25th to August 27th presidential election survey of 1,155 American Muslim voters, showing Muslim voter preferences varying somewhat based on sex, age, race, party affiliation, and location, with Muslim voters favoring Dr. Jill Stein in the swing states of Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which are very, very strong swing states, while Vice President Kamala Harris leads among Muslim voters in Georgia and Pennsylvania, and Donald Trump leads in Nevada. Conducted in partnership with the Political Consulting LLC, the additional survey results also show how Muslim voter preferences differ based on gender, race, party affiliation, age, likelihood of voting. So it says overall findings. Here's initial August 25th to 27th survey revealed that 29.4% of American Muslims plan to vote for Kamala Harris of the Democratic Party, virtually tied with Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, who follows closely with 29.1%. At the same time, Donald Trump with the Republican Party garners 11.2% of the vote, and Dr. Cornel West of the People's Party interesting, receives 4.2%. And it says Chase Oliver with the Libertarian Party has less than 1% support, with 16.5% of respondents remaining undecided. Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say, I think in certain areas, Cornel West had to get on the ballot in certain parties and not just as an independent. So I'm pretty sure that's why they say the People's Party. But yeah, either way, I'm still not sure why, if he cares about defeating duopoly, why he hasn't dropped out yet. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's also a really good point. It says further in battleground states, Dr. Stein leading Harris in Arizona at 35%, Michigan and 40%, and Wisconsin and 44%, while Harris leads Stein in Georgia at 43% and Pennsylvania at 37%. And Trump's highest support observed in Nevada is 27%, just ahead of Harris. So Kamala Harris leads among male Muslim voters at 29%, while Dr. Jill Stein holds a stronger position among Muslim women at 34%. Donald Trump has similar levels among men and women. Additionally, higher proportion of men at 17% are undecided compared to women. Racial demographics, Kamala Harris is supported by 55.3% of Black Muslim voters and 28% of Asian Muslims and 25.6% of white, Arab, and Turkic Muslims. Kind of interesting how they group together white, Arab, and Turkic Muslims together. Dr. Jill Stein is supported by 32.7% of white, Arab, and Turkic Muslims, 25.7% of Asian Muslims, and 11.2% of Black Muslim voters. That's interesting, right? How Black Muslims are actually more in favor of Kamala Harris than they are of Dr. Jill Stein.
It's just that unfortunate identity politics stuff. I think a lot of Black voters suffer from that immensely. And so, and they're also playing this game of one of these things, duopoly is going to win. So I think that this Black lady is somehow going to be better for us, even though currently she is facilitating the destruction of Muslims across the ocean.
Yeah. It says support for third parties. I want to go here. It says overall support for third party candidates Stein and West comes from both Muslim Democrats and Republicans, indicating discontent with both party platforms on the issue that Muslim Americans prioritize. So this is really interesting about how a lot of Muslims are really just sick and tired of what's going on in Gaza. And they are now looking towards a different option. I find it really interesting how I would like to see, I don't know, part of me wants to see Christians poll, but I think I pretty much know how that's going to go. Christians would pretty much go a higher amount towards Trump, especially with a lot of evangelicals. I used to be an evangelical, so yeah, I know. A lot of them would go towards Trump because especially of the social issues. But yeah, that's what I think. But as far as that's concerned, I honestly do not see. I see a huge. Well, let me ask you that. As far as those numbers with Muslim voters is concerned, what do you see the percentage being for someone like a Dr. Jill Stein when the exit polls come out?
I would expect it to be a little bit higher. One thing that I've been very impressed with Arab Americans and American Muslims is how they've actually kind of held some of these people's feet to the fire with not actually as a whole committing to one side or the other based off of an actual tangible need or tangible act that is happening to people in their population. It's something I wish Black Americans exercised, but I do see that the exit polling will probably be a little bit higher for Jill Stein after the fact.
Do you think you could go above 5%?
With just American Muslims? No.
Well, no, not just American Muslims. I mean, overall, I'm sorry.
Well, I honestly think this is the prime time for it to reach over 5%. I really do think that it's possible. I know she got like 1% in 2016, but I feel like she's done a pretty good job at really getting in people's faces and putting herself out there, even though she didn't even want to be in this space again. So given how just this whole scenario that's been given where these Democrats have completely betrayed any sense of faux compassion that they presented, and you have a lot of people being disillusioned to that, and you already have a Republican that's not really going to change anything different. I do think this is prime for a third party like the Green Party to reach above 5%. I think it can happen.
Yeah. I'm hopeful because the thing is, it's like Green Party, well, not just Green Party, but the third parties need a leg up. And I think I want to watch. I know Dr. Jill Stein did she did an interview with the Breakfast Club earlier. She was on Piers Morgan and as well as Glenn Greenwald recently. So, of course, these are going to be bigger channels that are going to drum up more support because people are listening to people like Jill Stein and going, well, wait a minute, this lady is actually on point with a lot of these issues. I remember yesterday I was watching the interview on Piers Morgan, and one of the things that one of the things that was brought up was Russian meddling, right? Because they were talking about podcasters that were linked to Russia. And Jill Stein completely turned it around. She goes, well, what about Israeli meddling? IPAC literally gives hundreds of millions of dollars in order to meddle in our elections, and nobody's talking about it. And that's it. Because we're going to talk about meddling from a foreign power, then you literally have a entity like IPAC that literally has sway over who gets elected in our government. This is a foreign nation with power stranglehold on our politicians. That doesn't sound right.
No. And I think, didn't they post that 100% of the people they backed in primaries in the Democratic Party, like won their primaries, like 100% of AIPAC backed Democrats that won their primaries. Like that, if that's not a some sort of foreign-ish entity influencing elections, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. And the crazy part is a lot of people are putting fear of it. By the way, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are both received money from IPAC. They are IPAC funded. Therefore, I always say this: they are compromised. They have been compromised. They will always be compromised because they are literally getting their money from a foreign government. And if this were Iran, if this were Venezuela, if this were Cuba, if this were China giving them money, this would be a huge deal. Everybody and their mama would be talking about it. But yet, nobody says a word when it's Israel. And this same state has literally murdered hundreds of thousands of people. Now, the Lancet had estimated that it's over 180,000. The estimates are jumping up. And the reason why they can't estimate more is because when you blow an area up, pieces of people are in different spots. So you can't really count them yet. So there are so many dead people that they can't even count most of them because they're blown to bits. And yet this is the same nation that has a huge, they hold our nation in the palm of their hand. And the thing is, it's not really necessarily Israel holding our nation in the palm of their hand. Israel is really just a puppet, just like the United States government is, right? The real people who are the people at the top. And the people at the top are people like the Elon Musks and the Harlan Crows and the Jeff Bezos. Those are the ones who are really driving things because they just want, anyway, in your own words, why is there this push to maintain this Zionist supremacy state in the Middle East, in your own words?
It's to hold down. It's to have their own. I think even RFK had said this. It's its own little warship in that area to control certain resources there, and and the reason it continues is because a lot of people just accept the fact that Israel's an ally, so of course we back them. Like it's. I hear this from Black liberals who gone to historically Black colleges and universities that know about the history of colonialism better than what you would get at a predominantly white institution, that repeat this same imperialist talking point that this is an ally. Of course we back the ally. And it's like, why would you support a colonial settler project that is literally there to steal the resources to make the Ben Gurion Canal as well through Gaza? Why would you just excuse that as like, it's an ally, so I can support this colonial project, even though I've learned that colonialism is bad. It's a mix of, there's resources there for the United States to control, and it continues because too much of the population has not a lot of curiosity in what it means to support an entity like Israel.
Yeah. I wanted to share this as well. There was this piece. Oh, yep. Found it. So I shared this before, but I think it's important to share this again because a lot of people are like, well, no, it's about the promise of land to these people by God. No, it's not. Ultimately, this is what it's about. This is from the United Nations Trade and Development. It says the unrealized potential of Palestinian oil and gas reserves. This came out in 2019. Oil and natural gas resources in the occupied Palestinian territory could generate hundreds of billions of dollars for development. And so it says geologists and resource economists have confirmed that the occupied Palestinian territory lies above sizable reservoirs of oil and natural gas wealth in Area C of the West Bank. Now, mind you, they're trying to take over the West Bank and the Mediterranean coast off the Gaza Strip, according to a UNCATD study. News discoveries of natural gas in the Levant Basin are in the range of 122 trillion cubic foot, while recoverable oil is estimated at 1.7 billion barrels. According to the study entitled The Economic Cost of Occupation for the Palestinian People, the Unrealized Oil and Natural Gas Potential. So it talks about offers to this offers an opportunity to distribute and share about $524 billion among the different parties in the region and promote peace and cooperation among all belligerents. But they don't want peace and cooperation. They actually want to take over the land because ultimately it's always about resources. And so the thing is, it's like when Kamala Harris and Donald Trump talk about protecting Israel, it's not for Jewish people. They don't care about Jewish people. If they actually did, they wouldn't have co-signed that war that's going on in Ukraine against Russia, because a lot of those Ukrainians that are fighting are part of the Azov Battalion, which is a neo-Nazi group.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't actually care about Jewish people. It was never about Jewish people.
Nope. And they will use Jewish people and the Holocaust in the 1940s till death to allow this Holocaust of today to continue.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, that's why I think it's important to put things into context. This is really about land theft. And if you actually do the research and find out about, Theodore Herzl, the father of Zionism, and then how even Ben-Gurion. So, we'll get into that in a second, but it's about to start. I'm going to make sure that we share the screen so that we can get on to this. There, it's done being done through ABC News. or we'll be watching on C-SPAN.
Okay.
So let's get into this.
This is an ABC News special.
Oh, geez. So they're trying to hype up this is really team sports, right? Red team versus blue team. This is why they show these things to, get people to cheer on. When in reality, the thing that should take precedence is the policies. And really, you're going to see just blurred.
Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Happy to
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
Hell no.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want.
That's more than a
President that
1 minute
understands
rebuttal.
the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris.
Oh, Lord, hang on. This was a lot. Okay. So, first of all, when it comes to the economy, okay, the economy that when it comes to the economy, you have to use dialectical materialism, basically meaning you have to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. As far as the economy goes, and as far as your thoughts, can Donald Trump brag about the economy? Can he do it without mentioning any of the gains that Barack Obama had given him?
I don't think so. I think you have pointed this out, that a lot of that stuff is sort of a continuation from the administration beforehand. So I think when Trump says that the pandemic was a big hit on that economy front, I mean, I agree that's true. And that a lot of jobs that came back were jobs that were lost because of the pandemic. But him to take full credit for how good the economy seemed under him, I don't think he could do that. He would have to rely on the president administration before him.
Yeah, because I mean, those were set in stone. But the thing is like, we also got to remember, you know, and this is not to give complete credit to the Democrats, because the thing is, like, because of the Democrats failed, is that they actually led to Donald Trump. And a lot of people say, well, it was just people's racism that led to that. It's like, no, the thing is, it's like, you know, Barack Obama also left a lot of working people out on the lurch. There was an article out of Jacobin that talked about how Black wealth actually tanked under Obama. And so if Black wealth tanked under Obama, then also that would, you know, go at a commensurate rate with white wealth too. And so a lot of people who were white were also feeling the sting of the economy as well, because the economy was not truly a bounce back economy for working people. It was a bounce back economy, or bounce forward economy, really, for the super rich, for the ultra rich. The ultra rich actually added on billions and billions onto their wealth. And so we're all still suffering. The thing that a lot of people, that neither of these people will say, that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, is that ultimately both of those administrations, both Democratic and Republican administrations, have actually contributed to working people actually doing worse under both administrations. The thing is, like, when they talk about things are so much better, according to whom? According to whom? And according which tax bracket are you talking about? Because you're actually talking about people who are rich, the people who they communicate with way more. And so this is why I talk about leave both parties. because they're both talking about, because they're going to talk about things like the GDP. They're going to talk about the stock market. The thing is, like, stock market is just a measurement of rich people's feelings. That's all it really is. It's never actually about you and me. It's actually about the ultra rich. Yep. All right, let's continue.
Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
Hang on. Why is she referencing Goldman Sachs?
Yeah.
The hell? Like, I don't give a crap about what Goldman Sachs has to say, because Goldman Sachs is one of those companies that actually wants exploitation to happen so that they can make more money.
Yeah, it's a weird flex. Same with the Dick Cheney endorsement and the fact that she's got like BlackRock and venture capitalists in her economic policy building. It's a very weird.
Yeah, that is a weird flex. Like, why would you reference Goldman Sachs? You know, is she that, outside of reality? Man, why did I agree to do this? These people. Oh, Lord. Save me, Katie. Save me.
Hey, man, I'm here with you, brother.
School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession.
Hang on. Hold on. What are we in right now? Hang on. What are we in right this minute?
In actual recession.
Please go ahead. Please.
No. Right. Like she says, we're going to get to a recession if we're not currently in one right now. It's,
Like, y'all, how much are eggs? Yeah. When was the last time y'all have been to the grocery store? How much is milk? Didn't I just do a story on Sunday about Kroger artificially inflating their prices? A few months back, Tyson, Cargill, and Purdue have actually been inflating their prices for eggs and chicken and meat. So, newsflash, Kamala, we're already in one. It's not necessarily being felt by the ultra rich, but we've been in a recession this entire time. I don't think most of us have actually recovered since the pandemic.
And they keep referencing they haven't, but I feel like there will be something brought up about the lowering of the inflation rate. I mean, it's still a positive inflation rate. Prices are still going up, even if they're not on average going up as much as they were probably a year before and the year before that. But even if you look into what's actually increasing, the grocery food, restaurant food is still increasing in prices. Rent, insurance, both car and health insurance, those are increasing well above the 2.9 or 3% rate. The only major thing that's decreasing in prices is used cars, and it's decreasing very significantly, which I think is contributing to that low 2.9, 3% inflation rate. But all other stuff other than groceries that matter to working class people that they will never talk about, those are increasing pretty rapidly.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go back into this. I gotta have self-control from the pause button. Jesus.
You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you, because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
She did not answer the question.
He did not.
She did not. Because if you're asked, okay, so your administration that you're a part of actually did keep some of a lot of the tariffs that Trump had put in place. She completely pivoted. She did not want to own up to, yeah, you kept the tariffs. You're talking about how bad they are, and yet you kept them. It's just like with the Trump tax cuts. Joe Biden kept the Trump tax cuts in place. So my question to you is, what's the difference between the Biden or Harris administration and the Trump administration? What's really fundamentally, tangibly, what's the difference?
There really isn't none. And they're both actually trying to outright each other on being anti-China in this sense, because we both know that tariffs on foreign goods, that doesn't benefit the pockets of consumers, but it appears to be some sort of attack on an adversary, China. which is, I think, why he keeps talking about these tariffs. He's saying, "Oh, look how hard I am on China. I put all these tariffs on them," even though it doesn't have a correlation to benefiting the consumer's pockets. And then that's what Kamala Harris tried to do, without answering the question of tariffs that she said was bad. She's saying, actually, Donald Trump was soft on China because he helped them get chips to make them better than us, and gave shout out to the Chinese president. They're turning this economic discussion into who's going to be harder on China. Like she even said there, like the goal should be for us to be better than China. Like, why wouldn't it be you as a progressive? Why wouldn't you try to focus on building an actual camaraderie relationship with another superpower? But yeah, they're virtually identical in that realm.
Yeah, I mean they're anti-diplomatic. I mean, wouldn't it be best to improve diplomatic relations with China, with President Xi, in order to be able to have more cooperation and collaboration so that we can actually do better for our people on the world stage? And yet it's almost, oh my God, China. It's this xenophobia that is this China-phobia that is basically saying that, oh my God, because they're doing better for their people, that's worse on us. That's like sitting in the household and you're not doing a damn thing for your kids, but you get mad at the dad across the street because he's actually doing better for his kids, and you find him to be a threat. Even though you, as a father, could actually step your game up in your own damn household. Why are you getting mad with the dad across the street? Right? Yep. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, God. Did that analogy work?
It did.
Okay.
Why be a good father when you just blame the other good father and make your kid hate that father?
Right? It's like, dude, like, don't get mad at the other husband for doing better with his wife than you're doing with yours. Step your game up, bro. Oh, Lord. These Americans.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you.
Hold up. Wait. Let me make myself bigger just so that you guys will get the full effect. I wish she was a Marxist. I wish. She is not at all anywhere on the left.
Nope.
Coming from a communist, yeah, I'm one. She is nowhere near. And you know what? When Donald Trump said, oh, well, I was going to send her a MAGA hat because she's sounding more like me. If that's the case, then how is she a Marxist, Don?
Thank you.
Is she a Marxist or isn't she a Marxist? Which one is it, Don? Donnie, you're talking out both sides of your mouth right now. I guess that's the reason why so many workers and so many companies hate you, because you talk about both sides of the mouth and you cheat them out for in business. Dude, this is a cheater. He's a swindler. That's the crazy part. Some of you people, especially a lot of you black people that are siding with Donald Trump, can't you see? He's flip-flopping just like Kamala. And yet you guys are like, oh, well, I actually did better before that. Yeah, guess what? You also probably did better financially under Barack Obama, too. You probably did better under George W. Bush, minus the 2008 collapse. You probably did better under Bill Clinton. But the thing is, like, inflation goes in a timeline. So therefore, guess what? Guess what? I guarantee you this. If Donald Trump actually wins this November, if he wins, people will know that they're actually doing worse under Donald Trump's second term
than his
first term. Mm-hmm. Watch. Am I wrong?
Nah, not at all.
A Marxist?
You just gotta laugh at that, man. Well, only my best of dreams could that be the case.
Donald Trump's an idiot, man. He is a fool, man. Jesus.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical.
Okay, first of all, hang on. That motherfucker's lying to you. Because I actually went over Amendment 4. KD actually wrote an article researching all the amendments from Amendment 1 to Amendment 6. Amendment 4 does not give people the right to abort in the 9th month. All right? It is the right to abortion being put back to the way it was before DeSantis had the 6-week ban, meaning that you have the ability to abort before fetal viability. Go ahead and go Google what is fetal viability. I guarantee you it's going to tell you 24 weeks.
Yep.
The average, the normal pregnancy lasts 39 weeks. That means there is no abortions happening at 39 weeks. So Don is lying to you.
I mean, he's just throwing that's just his red meat to the evangelicals. He is very aware that he is BSing everybody, even himself, with that statement. It's just, and I feel like he doesn't really care about the issue all that much. It's already in the States. I don't think he doesn't care about the issue enough for evangelicals to, I think, actually do an abortion ban. And he knows he's not gonna try to win over liberals with saying, oh yeah, I support some sort of make sense abortion limit. But yeah, this he doesn't care about this issue. He's just talking, okay, my people want to hear, oh yeah, I'm for a ban. I don't like to hear, they're killing babies. That's what he's just saying. He has no thoughts or care of this actual issue.
Yep. Gosh. Care about life at the point of conception, then we might as well start caring about life before conception. Every single time you nut, then guess what? You're also killing somebody. Anyway, let me continue.
And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born is okay. And
Hey, first of all, and here's the thing: don't make me defend Kamala Harris, you asshole. Here's the thing: number one, that's a lie. Number two, you want to talk about execution after the 9th month? Guess what? You know what else is execution after the 9th month? Executing people through capital punishment. You know, that's execution. Oh my gosh. Did I just straw man? Yeah, but I don't care, because that's the problem. That's the problem with people like him, is that he's actually lying to you. And that's not what they said. God, he's making me defend the Democrats. Ugh, I feel dirty now.
Again, it's that red meat. That's all he knows. What he cares about, not the issue, but making sure the people who he knows are going to vote for him believe that he's as unhinged on that on the issue as they are.
God, he's making me defend. He's making me defend this lady. I don't want to defend her. Jesus.
And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
No, they didn't.
That's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next.
Now, Kamala Harris just lied, because he does make exceptions for rape and incest in the life of the mother. That's the thing. See, here's the thing. They both are lying.
Mm-hmm.
See? Because now one has to make one look more extreme than the other. Now Kamala's making me defend Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, like, as soon as she starts talking, then we're gonna have to play defense for somebody else.
God, I hate this. Just bring on Jill Stein, please. Just bring her on. Jesus. Katie, this is gonna be a long night.
That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you.
First of all, golly, she's going to make me defend Trump again. Donald Trump actually does not co-sign Project 2025.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
has-
his plan.
And has said that he would not sign in a national abortion ban. But I mean, of course, he's a liar. But when he says he's going to do something else horrible, he's telling the truth. But whatever with that point. All Kamala Harris did there was just appeal to emotion. I mean, that's all she did, and then threw in when Congress, knowing good and gosh darn well that Congress will not be made up of any sort of demographics to even get something like that passed. So that's just, she just knows that she can say this, and people will accept this as like, oh yeah, that's why she's going to protect. How's she going to do that? Why couldn't she do this right now? Why couldn't they do that before they lost the House? How exactly are they going to go about protecting abortion rights while just saying, oh yeah, leave it up to Congress? What do you mean? You had control of Congress in your first 2 years, nothing happened. You lost control of all the Congress in your next couple of years, and what's upcoming, there's no real show that you will win the House back or have enough in the Senate to pass something like that. It's the appeal to emotion, and then throwing the responsibility onto something that everybody knows won't ever do what needs to be done, and she has no plan for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's like both her and Donald Trump are lying about each other's positions in order to make one person seem more extreme than the other. And my thing is, it's like, mark my words. If Kamala Harris if she was to win in November, guess what? We're all going to be coming back to the same talking point, the same soundbite, and in 4 years and go, yeah, where was that codifying of Roe v. Wade? And this is why they actually want the House and the Senate to go to the Republicans, so that they can dangle Roe v. Wade over your head, so that you'll vote for them and donate to their Act Blue. Oh, we need to pass Roe v. Wade. You guys need to donate to our Act Blue. And then next thing you know, you end up acquiescing and then donating to their Act Blue. But does Roe v. Wade actually get accomplished? Barack Obama promised in 2008 that he was going to codify Roe v. Wade into law. And then in 2009, he said that's not his highest legislative priority. Go ahead, look it up. Go ahead, Google it.
Oh, but there's already liberals in all these spaces ready to put out excuses. Oh, the Democrats weren't the same Democratic Party that they are today. I'm like, they were still his party. He's the president of that party. The vice president is the president of the Senate. Who cares if the makeup was of some old dogs that are I don't know, backwards with their stuff. If you're a leader of the party, leave the party. LBJ led the party to get civil rights, voting rights, and Fair Housing Act passed. So what's that? So what's the excuse? And then you gotta oh man, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No.
Yeah.
It's all good.
If it comes back, I hope it comes back. It's
No, of course. Yeah, and I mean, the fact is that you need to be the leader of the party. Like, why? And if you know that the American people, particularly, believe in a particular issue very strongly, then why not? And the crazy part is like, that, a lot of people who have said Roe v. Wade is settled law. So therefore, it's already accepted. The problem is that you want to throw that red meat to your base. And that's the problem with people like Donald Trump.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I remember.
Okay.
Like the Democrats set themselves up to lose these Supreme Court seats by getting rid of the filibuster for just regular district and Court of Appeal judges in 2013, off of the excuse that Republicans were blocking Obama's nominations. But if you look at his judge record from 2009 up to when he left office, he was able to get a decent amount of judges through well before he was able to get a lot through with filibuster proof Senate. He was still able to get some through without the filibuster, but they took the filibuster away for judge confirmations. And he still didn't get that many judges, like compared to how he got before. They were about equal. And then afterwards, when Mitch McConnell took control as the Senate Majority Leader, he took that filibuster and extended that to the Supreme Court. So now, when you have when Trump gets in charge, or when Obama was in charge, but the Republicans held, a good chunk of the majority of the Senate, they were able to block his stuff without any pushback from Democrats. And then when Trump gets involved, they're able to pass all his judges without the Democrats being able to filibuster. And therefore, Roe v. Wade was lost. The Democrats set themselves up by both not passing it when they had the chance and by getting rid of any sort of safeguards to block Republicans from getting in whatever judges they wanted. But they want to protect women's rights.
Yep. And if I were Obama, I would have pressured Ruth Bader Ginsburg to step down before she died. I would have pushed her to step down, and then had, Merrick Garland slide right on in. But he didn't do that. Why? Because he was counting on her to die for all that, so that they could have a further divided court that leads to the right.
Yep.
Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are
Space
voting,
rats.
and it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well, I
to your
won't
desk?
have to, because again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really don't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs, barely can afford to do it. And what you are putting her through is unconscionable.
Hang on. I just covered earlier today that you also have many Americans who are getting on planes next to strangers just so they can have health care in other countries that give universal health care, because people like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden don't want to give universal health care to the rest of us. So guess what? We're all in the same boat together.
Yep. Yeah.
And you actually think, hang on, if she does not want to give us universal health care, do you actually think that she's going to want to give actual health care for women who need, health care as far as abortion go? Do you actually think she's going to be willing to give that?
No, she couldn't. Like, if you can't talk about caring about abortion rights if you are also willing to paywall that reproductive care. I saw, I can't remember the study specifically, but a good chunk of women who go in to get an abortion and they get turned away, they're usually not that well off. And economically speaking, after they have the kid, their economic situation just gets worse. And therefore again, this is them talking to the middle class. They're talking to people who could afford that actual procedure. Because there are a lot of people, a lot of women who can't get the procedure because they literally can't afford it.
Yeah.
So how could you really be for abortion rights if you're going to paywall that by not being for Medicare for all?
Exactly. And the problem is that you have people like, Donald Trump, who is completely against, universal health care. So that is never going to happen. And then, Kamala Harris, she will cosplay like she's for universal health care, saying health care is a human right, when in reality, she doesn't feel that way, because if she would, then she would actually pass legislation or push for legislation that would actually happen. She's literally the president of the Senate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, like, over 50% of Republicans actually approve of universal health care. So 50% of Republicans, over 60% of independents, and almost 90% of Democrats approve of universal health care. That's a slam dunk, baby. That's a layup.
Easy.
But they don't want to do it.
No, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th?
Hang on. About the IVF, regarding what Donald Trump just said, here's the thing. This is why some evangelicals are pissed off at Donald Trump.
Which is odd.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that because in IVF, the embryos have to be frozen.
Oh.
Yeah. So the fact that Donald Trump and actually I showed it that Donald Trump is actually for IVF. So, to be honest with you, Kamala Harris just lied. She lied because Donald Trump actually endorses IVF. And in fact, Donald Trump said that if he becomes president again, he will make it so that the government or they will push insurance agencies to fully pay for IVF treatments, essentially having a Medicare for all for IVF.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So Donald Trump, when it comes to IVF, he ran to Kamala Harris's left.
But he's about to run right back to the right to insinuate that she's for 8th month, 9th month abortions again.
Yep, absolutely.
8th month, 7th month.
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question.
you
Would you
could
veto?
do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security.
They've never heard of adoption? Donald Trump is dense, man. Like, don't get me wrong. Both of these people are lying, but Donald Trump is, they both are. Oh my God, they're such liars.
We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history.
Who cares?
She knew that would get under his skin. She knew that he would.
Like I said, Donald Trump is dense. He is dense, and he fell for it. He fell for it. Bro, pardon me for saying this, she told him that his dick was small, essentially. And now he's trying to defend it. No, it's big. See, it's girthy. See, man, this is why when you have an ego, when somebody hits you in your ego, and they know she weaved her way. And guess what? His ego is his weakness. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Now he's spending all this time on defending the size of his crowds. Who gives a crap? Like, I don't care about the size of the crowds. I care about the policies. Donald Trump is such an idiot, man.
Yeah, she baited him hard.
Is she-
He took it.
Yep, she baited him. Look at her. Look at her. She knew exactly what she's doing. You got to remember, this is a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
He fell for that hook, line, and sinker. Like a moth to a flame. An orange-ass moth to a flame.
Politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Okay. He really fell for it. Because she said that, oh, he's going to keep going back to immigration.
Yeah. He's definitely bombing this question very hard. Not answering, because he's actually feeding in more to the point. Like, he's saying all this bad stuff has been happening. So why did you block the bill from happening? Like, he's grasping for straws now.
Yeah, and he didn't answer the question. See, Kamala Harris didn't answer the question. Now Donald Trump's not answering. Answer the question, Donnie. As much as he likes to yap, he does not like to answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
Directly, at least.
And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success.
Donald's
Not only
failing.
success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good.
All dogs are naked. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, look, besides the occasional Christmas sweater, I've never seen a dog that's clothed. His xenophobia has actually contributed to his brain rot.
Yes. This is a very
What the hell?
answer.
Bro, is this your king and queen? Democrats, Republicans, is that your king and queen? Oh, y'all cooked. This country is cooked. This country is fricasseed.
The thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
Now, that's not a flex, ma'am.
At all.
That is definitely not a flex.
And when she mentioned John McCain, was she referring to 2020? Because John McCain is dead.
That motherfucker gone.
Right. Just weird flex. Very weird flex. Yeah, all these Republicans that haven't changed at all, they support me.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm definitely gonna get the liberal stuff that I want done. Obviously, like it's okay.
It's crazy because it's just like, oh yeah, the guy that contributed to over 1 million Iraqis' deaths actually endorsed me. Isn't that great?
Right. Weird flag.
And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration, which is what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you
First of all, let me also say this. Well, please go ahead.
Oh no, he again didn't answer the question, and to kind of point out earlier, like if he was smarter, he could probably talk about how like the internal stuff with the Biden-Harris administration, their staffers, they hate each other, they hate the leaders, and a lot of people have quit. Like that's something that if it's something to point out, then she didn't fire anybody. Like he's not smart, but just this whole this should be a topic that he should be probably winning at because he already has the advantage politically. People think he would be better on it, and he's literally like shitting the bed right now with just doing these unhinged rants about this rampant scare that communist Kamala is gonna bring about or has brought about, and it's not appealing to anybody but the people who are already dead set on voting for him anyway. So he is flailing right now. Like I'm actually shocked he's doing this bad right now.
Yeah. And another thing, one of the things that also people need to realize is that actually the crime rates among undocumented immigrants are typically lower than actual citizens, primarily because if they get caught committing a crime, then they get deported. So therefore, they actually mind their P's and Q's more than actual citizens do. So when they talk about, oh my God, all these criminals, when he goes into this xenophobic rant, he's actually lying. But make no mistake, because even though Kamala Harris may not be saying the same things, she still wants to do the same things that Donald Trump does.
Yep. The separation of families is still happening. That's something that Biden said he would end, and that is still happening. Just the kids in cages, like the separation of families is a continuation.
Yep. And by the way, who built those cages, Katie?
Barack Obama.
Yep. So both parties are involved in this. This is why I say you got to leave them both in the dust.
do know the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you.
Hang on, wait a minute. He said that the FBI, didn't include it. It's basically, is he saying that the FBI lied?
Well, because of Biden's FBI, he could say that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then Donald Trump is no longer backing the blue then. ACAB, baby. ACAB. Is Donald Trump ACAB now?
I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
Wait, Donald Trump is calling for defunding the police?
Dang.
Did Kamala Harris just run to Donald Trump's right?
Definitely. Yep. ACAB, baby.
ACAB.
So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump.
Wait, hold up. They both have done weaponization of the Justice Department. Think about how Donald Trump did not stop the Justice Department from continuing to go after Julian Assange.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump allowed it to keep going, even though Donald Trump says that he's not for weaponization of the Justice Department, yet he allowed it to happen, right?
Yep.
And the thing is, it's like what happened with the Hoodoo 3. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville. They had an FBI raid the same week that Donald Trump had an FBI raid in Mar-a-Lago. Is Donald Trump speaking out on behalf of the Uhuru 3 right now?
No. He's also not speaking out for the Cop City protesters that got hit with the RICO charges. But the whole question was about. I haven't heard Kamala Harris say anything about immigration in this immigration portion of the debate, and this it's pretty crappy. The mediators are crappy. Like and all like
yep.
I don't. This is very bad.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again.
Hang on, but that also would include people like Joe Biden as well, who would have total immunity. So she needs to also clarify that as well.
She won't, but you're right.
Yeah.
This is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
we do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
That's a lie. She did say that she would have a ban on fracking. She actually said it. I think it was right after a debate that she said that she, of course, or it was during the debate where she said that, of course, she would have a ban on fracking. So yes, she just lied.
Yep. I think it was 2019 around that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term.
They didn't ask about homes. They asked about reversal on your policies.
Another question evasion. They're having a conversation of who can evade questions more smoothly. And I think Kamala Harris is winning in that regard, but they're still not answering these questions.
Yep.
Work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
response?
First
of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants.
Hang on. First of all, as far as the defund the police, I wish Kamala Harris was for defund the police, but she's not. Kamala is a cop.
No. The only thing she did was ride the wave of defund the police in 2020 by saying, "Oh, I think we should fund other things." That's as far as she went to defund the police.
Yeah.
And she went back to what she said about protecting seniors from scams. Did she not prosecute Steve Mnuchin of One West Bank, who literally scammed senior citizens?
Nope. And also, by the way, if you guys go ahead and do your research, who gave Kamala Harris $12,000 for her reelection, for her election campaign for Attorney General? Donald Trump. Donald Trump literally donated to Kamala Harris. So it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, the whole thing about transgender people in prison. So Kamala Harris is not a advocate. She's not an ally of LGBTQ people because she actually denied trans people the right to be able to transition while they're in prison. Mm-hmm. So Donald Trump is actually lying to you there.
Yep. And she actually tried to take credit when that actually happened, because she was asked about that, like, hey, you kind of denied this. She said, oh, well, it was in the rules, but I worked to change it. But what really changed it was a court case with a transgender woman. And there's no mention of Kamala Harris being a part of that court case at all. So she tried to take credit for a transgender woman's actions. She's no ally.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
To confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar. But they take...
Yo, did this man just say he demonized solar, and then he goes, I'm a big fan of solar. Oh, but I'm getting hot. I can't take my phone off. These people are stupid.
I think they're stupid, and they think their voters are stupid. Yeah.
With him.
Oh my God.
I look like a caution cone right now, because literally caution. By the way, Donald Trump is the same color as my shirt. It's a beautiful shirt, isn't it? This is Donald Trump. You've never seen a shirt better than this.
Better than my shirt.
400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed?
Oh my God. Oh my God. He keeps going back to immigration. Wow. Dude, stick to the damn topic. Oh my God.
Allowed to pour it in. She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, "Oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet." That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was,
by the way, the police, the Capitol Police, let the people in on J6. It was the police that let them in.
I don't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I was just saying, what is even the point of this question? How is this a question before Gaza?
Yeah. Yeah. And is it really, it's not even a policy question. Anyway, let's finish.
About you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured. And
wrap it up, Kamala. Wrap it up.
The former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they've destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that,
Wrap it up, Don.
those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that.
Are you
What?
not acknowledging that you lost in
No,
2020?
I didn't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
Yours.
It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to
Wrap
the
it up,
voters for
Don.
proof.
Wrap it
I
up.
got almost 75 million votes.
Let's
Most
go.
votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge looked at it.
and said
They
there
said
was
we
no
didn't have
widespread
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you, you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you, we have so many facts and statistics. But you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as vice president of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running on Senate first. He got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time
I
is
think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning out to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
False.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
False.
Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so,
False.
absolutely, I said then, I say.
Okay, first of all, there's absolutely no there's no evidence that sexual assault actually occurred on October 7th. They actually many different media outlets, Times of Israel, Haaretz, they actually confirmed that there's no credible evidence that actually occurred. So when she says something like sexual assault happened, that's not true. By the way, I haven't seen this before. This is all still live. She's also going to say about babies, and that was also debunked too. So,
and she's ignoring the actual proven cases of Palestinian hostages and prisoners being raped. Like, people are
absolutely
sick. She's literally justifying this genocide by saying all that falseness.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution.
First of all, Benjamin Netanyahu and all the other Zionists do not want a ceasefire. They want all the Palestinians dead. Let's be real. Let's call a thing a thing. Like, they actually want them out of the way. And the thing is that Benjamin Netanyahu has made that abundantly clear. Just research the Greater Israel Project, okay? Because that's what Benjamin Netanyahu wants to do. The goal is to expand Israel beyond what it is right now, and to go into Jordan, and to Syria, and into Egypt, and all these other different places. You think it's going to stop at Gaza? No, it's not. It's also going to go into these other nations too.
Yep. Yeah.
And ultimately, what people like Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to do is trying to clear out the way. And Kamala Harris is saying that they're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. That is absolute and utter lie.
Yep.
Because if they actually wanted a ceasefire, they would have did an arms embargo and stopped the weapons going into Israel. And that would have forced a ceasefire. And also, Hamas has actually pushed for ceasefires since October 8th or 9th. I'm sorry, 9th or 10th. They've actually been pushing for a ceasefire. The problem is that Israel doesn't want one. And they don't care about the hostages. I know another thing for you to look up. The Hannibal Directive.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and look that up. And how the Hannibal Directive has been initiated by Israel, by the IOF, so that they can murder the hostages, so then there is no leverage.
Yeah, and like, again, not answering the question. Biden said he's working for ceasefire, but they're just at the stalemate. What are you going to do to fix it and get past the stalemate? Oh, I'm going to work tirelessly for a ceasefire. Are you kidding me?
This is crazy, man.
But what really ticks me off about her stance is that so many people that grifted off of the deaths of all those Palestinians were pretending that she was going to be some sort of saving grace.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want to talk down on Black activists and Black political commentators who pointed that out. They don't want to address any of that. Kamala Harris will be 1% better on genocide compared to Donald. Are you kidding me?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
That will never happen because a two-state solution denotes that a Palestinians having their own independent state would mean they will also have their own military.
Yeah.
And so Israel would never stand for Palestinians actually having an actual military.
Yeah, they pretended that they tried a two-state solution with Gaza and the West Bank, but Gaza, even though Hamas was elected in 2006 to lead the area, they don't control anything there. They don't control the ports, the utilities, they can't even control building permits. And then in the West Bank, where there's no Hamas at all and no hostages either, Israel's just been creeping steadily more in there, taking people's homes, and Israeli citizens are just murdering Palestinians.
Yep.
It's like, what do you mean we could do a two-state? How could you do a two-state solution with an apartheid state?
Yep, absolutely.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President.
Hold up, Katie. Let me ask you. Kamala Harris hates Israel?
A joke.
You mean to tell me?
It's insane. He's one thing you could count on Trump to say is some out-of-pocket nonsense.
You're telling me that a Zionist like Kamala Harris hates Israel?
You telling me that the U.S. doesn't currently have sanctions on Iran? This freaking guy.
Yes, Tim. Yes, Tim.
This
Absolutely.
freaking guy.
Jesus Christ, these people. They're both Zionists trying to say, I'm more Zionist than the other.
President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down.
Oh my
Russia
God.
last week said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News
Oh,
presidential debate
God.
from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia.
Oh my goodness. This is crazy.
This is rough. I knew it was going to be bad, but this is, man.
I honestly thought this was going to be like kind of doable, but for some reason, I can't. So, people in the chat, I want to ask you this. Do you think, like, even just from an outside perspective, who's winning this debate so far in your view? Put a 1 if you think it's Kamala Harris, put a 2 if you think it's Donald Trump. Honestly, I don't even know. Like, I'm in the middle. Like, I think they're basically at a stalemate. What do you think, Katie?
I'm going to retract my earlier statement about Trump probably taking this because, wow. They've both been presented with pretty bad questions. The mediators have not actually forced either of them to answer the questions, and both of them are dodging these questions pretty poorly, I might add. I feel like who's losing right now is us because this is torture.
Yeah. I mean, my brain right now is losing. I'll be honest with you, because I'm honestly at a point right now where I actually wanted to run my head through a brick wall with these people. But I mean, as far as people like Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump talking about Gaza, they both want to continue the genocide going because they want to, fight for Israel. I mean, they're both compromised, so I think that's what, a lot of people, don't realize is that our nation has been taken over and compromised by these people. So
I think what's somewhat of a more depressing thought is that there are people watching this debate and are genuinely captured by one of these candidates. Like everything that candidate is saying, they are loving it. And
yeah.
I don't understand. Like even if you're in the duopoly, how are any of their answers like making you feel comfortable and letting either of them lead? I don't see it.
Yep, absolutely. Let's continue. Go back. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll be right
now.
back.
2.5 years. Into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect the president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris.
Here's the thing. This war needs to end, but Raytheon, Boeing and all these other different military contractors, they don't want the war to end because that's money actually going directly to them.
Yep.
And then Trump talks about, I want this war to end, but yet you nearly caused World War III by the murder of Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah. Both of those conflicts, Israel and Ukraine, can be stopped by the U.S. stopping sending them money and weapons. That's how you stop those. Stop giving them money and weapons.
Yep, absolutely.
Want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander in chief, if elected, How would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
Hold on. Vladimir Putin has over an 80% approval rating in Russia, which she's talking about dictator.
Well, obviously, those polls he forced the people to like him or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. And what evidence do they have that he would put his eyes on Poland? Like, why is Poland specifically like is Poland not in NATO?
Every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
Because that's what people like Kamala Harris would do if she was in Russia.
Yeah, I don't even know how they could even get that talking point. They keep saying it as if there's anything that could back that up, except for just the assumption that we're stupid enough to listen to them and say, of course, our leaders that we don't like, they don't like him, so we shouldn't like him.
It's Red Scare BS, because they're still trying to make Russia sound like it's a communist state. They're still trying to make it sound like it's the Soviet Union, when in reality, no, Vladimir Putin is nowhere near being a communist, nowhere near being a socialist. And the funny part is like, I'm gonna put it out there. I am definitely no fan of Putin's at all, because especially he's anti-communist. But the thing is, like, when they try to make him sound like he's some type of the dictator, no. Should he have went into Ukraine? No, but he was provoked as well. That's like having a mean dog and you keep pushing the dog and keep throwing rocks at it, and then the dog jumps over the fence and then starts to bite the hell out of you. Well, you shouldn't have been throwing rocks inside the yard against the dog.
Yeah.
You pushed him there. And
he
the problem is,
he would have been on their side too. He would have been on their side too. He wanted to join NATO back in 1990, in the 90s.
Yeah. And in fact, the coup that happened in Ukraine in 2014 was actually pushed by people like Victoria Nuland. You also had people who were trying to help orchestrate it, like, oh my goodness, what's his name? He died. Victoria Nuland and people like John McCain, who also helped facilitate, the coup that happened in Ukraine. So it was, essentially bipartisan. And so this whole thing, really, to be honest with you, Kamala Harris just ran to Donald Trump's right. She's now sounding more hawkish than Donald Trump. It's crazy.
Yeah. You see why she earned those 200 plus Republican endorsements, including the facilitator of the Iraq War.
Yep, absolutely.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility.
She has not answered the question again. Mm-hmm. And she's just busy giving opening and closing arguments this entire evening. Like she's in a court.
I find it honestly disgusting at this point how they keep trying to pretend they care about law and order and all that type of good stuff when they're breaking the Leahy laws right now. Like they've acknowledged that at least human rights violations have occurred from the Israeli offensive forces to the people in Gaza and the West Bank. The ICC and ICJ have pointed out violations, war crimes done against the Palestinian people all throughout occupied Palestine. And the Leahy laws prevent the United States from funding or sending weaponry to any sort of nation that is committing these types of violations. And in their own admission that they know violations are happening, they are still pledging to send them weapons, but are going to pretend they care about law and order and upholding some sort of standard. It's American exceptionalism is probably one of the biggest jokes in the global community.
Yep.
In terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to
General
Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
She never answered the question again
Yep.
because she was supposed to answer if she bear any responsibility for the way the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan played out. Never actually answered the question. So watch Donald Trump also weave through. If they ask him another direct question, we're going to see that as well.
President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump.
If you would have withdrew out of Afghanistan better, Donald, then why didn't you withdraw out of Afghanistan? You have 4 years to do it.
Yep. Yeah. Because the swamp told him to stay.
Yep.
Thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
Oh, I'm so glad she brought that up. I am so glad. Okay, so here's the thing. Both of them, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, are horrible to Black people. They're horrible for Black people. I'm glad she brought that up. Because the thing is that we can also talk about how there was evidence that could have exonerated a man on death row, and she didn't want that DNA evidence to be done, in court, so that that man could be exonerated. So both of them are horrible when it comes to treatment of Black people.
Yeah, I would say her focus on truancy laws impacted poor Black families. Her sort of extending people's sentences to keep their labor. Well, Black people are very overrepresented in these prisons is an impact to Black people. Her stance on policing, which is definitely not a defund the police type of stance. In fact, she's going all in on this law and order stuff. No mention of Sonia Massey at all, a Black woman that was killed by the police just recently. Again, she's using her perceived identity to garner such support. And the thing that Trump, again, is not smart enough to do is I don't know why he didn't just say, well, she said this and then she said this. It seems like she is trying to manipulate people off of identity politics by not being honest about how she would even describe herself. Like, both these folks are very bad on race. The president she worked under is probably just as bad, if not worse, than Donald Trump in regards to race, given his history. In fact, the history that she exploited in the debate against him, just to turn around and, be a sidekick.
Yep, absolutely. And the whole thing with the Central Park 5, actually, she was correct on that. He still stood, 10 toes down on, his decision to recommend the death penalty for the Central Park 5, even though they were exonerated.
Yeah.
So they both are horrible. This is why we say Black people leave the duopoly, leave both parties.
took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Okay, first of all, on that one point for the first-time home buyers, by the way, it is for first-time home buyers and first-generation home buyers on her website, number one. Number two, what about the people who actually lost houses in 2008 that weren't able to recover them, especially Black people? Because if they lost their homes and they already have bought a home, then that means they're not eligible. Also, the $25,000 on her website, it says up to $25,000. It doesn't say $25,000. So if it's up to $25,000, that means not everybody's going to get that much.
And I think it's a tax credit. You'd have to buy the house first, and then you get you possibly get up to $25,000.
Yep, and it's a tax deduction, meaning, or a tax credit, meaning you're not going to get $25,000 up front. You're going to have to spend that money first. And who has the money to do it?
Not a lot of people. And she doesn't have plans. She has wish lists.
Yeah.
How you you have things you want to do, but no plans to actually get them accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She
Why
has
did
a
they turn his mic
plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump-
the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
going
need
to
to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So
Now, just to let you know, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was a Heritage Foundation plan, meaning it was pushed by Republicans. So if Donald Trump realizes that the Affordable Care Act is a terrible plan, that means that the Republican plan that Obama put in is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the criteria, he says something that's more affordable than you have now, is better with health quality, can reach more people. The answer is Medicare for all. Well, actually, nationalization of the healthcare system, in my opinion. But
yeah,
in this context, Medicare for all is the answer.
Yep, you're right.
just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Oh my goodness. Oh, do you have a plan? I have a concept of a plan. Oh.
I have an imagination of a plan, you know.
I got a concept of a plan. Oh my gosh.
I've been thinking
Vice
about
President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it, pass this prologue in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to
Access to healthcare.
That's the key word. Access.
Yeah.
60,000 people still die every year because they don't have health care.
Yep. Access. Like I got access to buy a Maybach or a Maserati.
Yeah.
But can I actually afford it? No.
It's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We could interpret that question in terms of her back.
Oh man, I can't believe I just did that. Wait.
Supposedly, China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And
so one of the things that I honestly really just wanted to point to was that Kamala Harris talks about how climate change is something that is an existential crisis, yet at the same time she wants to approve of fracking. Katie?
Yeah, that's backwards. Bragging about building factories. How, like, factories are very large polluters in air, water. And then there's the Willow Project that was approved under the Biden administration, and the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline, which was a huge release of carbon. Like, there's, platitudes and sunshine rainbows. I want to save the environment, though all my actions indicate otherwise.
Yeah. And I mean, if you really want to compete with China, why aren't we building high-speed electric rail?
Yeah. Why would you try to cut off more electric vehicles if you think electric vehicles could help with the environment? Why would you cut off getting more access to those with tariffs?
Yeah. We could just build the infrastructure, which would create millions of new jobs, and then have high-speed electric trains that go, from crisscross the nation. That would be a huge boom to the economy. But Donald Trump and Kamala Harris aren't interested in that.
Nope.
Closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News president.
So as far as the closing statements, we'll get to that. It's crazy because there is really no true policy position that actually is good for the environment. And I would say, especially the Green Party, that's their wheelhouse, the environment. But, as far as with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, like, they really don't care about the environment. Joe Biden didn't really care about the environment either. And so, as somebody that is, Gen Z, I know that you don't have any faith in either party. But what would you say to a Gen Zer who says that they just need to, stave off, do harm reduction? And let's say they say that we need to vote for Kamala Harris. What would you say to a Gen Z in regards to the climate?
In regards to the climate, I mean, harm reduction has us funding the military industrial complex even more so, which is harming the environment. Harm reduction led to genocide. Like, harm reduction is not a real thing. What it is that you're You understand there's harm happening, and you're just trying to create a cushion between the harm of your leaders and yourself. That is what people mean when they talk about harm reduction. They know harm's out there. They know harm is going to continue. What they're reducing is the impact of that harm is on them specifically. But harm reduction is not real. That's what I would say. I don't know if it will convince those people, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're about to do their closing statements. So let's get into it.
The ABC News presidential debate. A reminder, we'll open the phone lines as the debate ends to get your reaction.
Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Hang on, Don, you never finished the wall.
You didn't.
Like, you're literally letting Joe Biden finish your wall. Like, the hell? Jeez Louise. Pot, eat, kettle.
No, basically, that was the entire debate. It was the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah. Or, and I like to say, the chamber pot calling the toilet white.
He should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm Dave.
Oh, gosh. Well, before we get into Dr. Jill Stein's comments, your thoughts about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's debate performance, all in all.
Oh, it was horrible. It was not good at all.
Yeah,
just they could barely even differentiate between themselves, other than Kamala taking a more clear stance in regards to abortion. Like, you could not tell me that these two were in a different party based off of how they were talking and what they thought was important to talk about in each of these questions that they did not answer. Yeah, it was the people that definitely lost, just like all the other debates, are the American people. And yeah, they're the biggest losers here. And anybody that looks at either of those two candidates after this debate and having any sense of confidence in either of them as a leader, folks are too far gone. Too far gone.
Yep, absolutely. Now, just to go over just a little bit what some people may have said. Oh my gosh. Code Commander says, wait, that's not all what the science says. According to new studies, even if we blacked out the sun, even without solar radiation, the climate will continue to burn off our atmosphere. What a man says, the F is an opportunity economy. Is that like a gig economy?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, basically.
Because we actually have a war economy, for real, for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Edward says he ain't changing shit. It's already a mess. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Rondo says all the insurance companies should be seized and nationalized.
I agree.
Let me check. In the Rockbin side, we're good there. I think we're good on the... Is Rumble working? Yes, it is. Okay. I'm going to check for Rumble rants, and then we shall move on. A non-user said, hey, JB, sorry you're putting yourself through this. Not even any good zingers from what I heard. Thumbs up to you. Take care. Thanks, a non-user. Appreciate it. All right. So let's go into Jill Stein. I'm pretty sure she's going to be a lot more better on this.
Definitely a palate cleanser for sure.
A palate cleanser. Thank you very much. All right. Take it away, Dr. Stein.
The typical misleading disinformation, the dodging, the personal attacks, the accusations being hurled at against each other, this denial of the reality of where we are.
I think
Dave,
as
are you
far as the
hearing me?
tweets,
Hold on just one moment, please, while we
we
get our
covered
stream
everything,
straight here. Hang on just one
and
second.
we can just
I'm
tweet
gonna
out
put
the
this on pause for
link to the
one moment.
RSV.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, we're dealing with grassroots technology here.
I see Jill on Twitter right now.
Let's see, let me just,
You're
everyone needs to mute here. I'm sorry. We've got our streams crossed. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah,
Just back up. Thank you again so very much for being here to hear actually, a real debate and what are the real issues that are confronting the American people, the real crises that were not mentioned in this pseudo debate. The crisis of empire, the crisis of crushing inequality, the crisis of the 3 richest billionaires in this country having the wealth of the lower 50% altogether. Just 3 super rich billionaires control as much wealth as half of America all added together. The incredible corruption of our political system, the fact that that money from the oligarchs is what actually powers both the Democratic and the Republican parties. The fact of the housing crisis, that half of all Americans now are basically within 1 or 2 paychecks of evictions, that half of Americans are paying 30 to 50% of their income right now just to keep a roof over their heads, which doesn't leave much then to put food on the table, to pay your car insurance if you even have a car, to pay your student loan debts and all the rest. That's not working. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 87 million Americans do not have adequate health care. Some 18 million Americans cannot afford their pharmaceuticals, and some 8 million Americans in the last year for which the data exist were actually driven into poverty by the costs of their health care. If you develop cancer, your odds are over 40% that you're going to spend down your life savings within 2 years of trying to deal with your cancer. These are the kinds of emergencies that we did not hear about. We mostly heard, accusations of, one candidate against the other. We heard about, what great plans they each had, but we didn't hear very much about those plans. From Kamala Harris, we heard, at least what I heard, was the $6,000 child tax benefit for the first year with a new child, and a $25,000 tax credit, I think, for a down payment on a house. Now, how far is that going to get you to solving this all-out housing crisis that has caused unprecedented levels of homelessness right now and unprecedented stress among everyday Americans just trying to keep a roof over their heads? So let me talk about some of the actual solutions that we would offer. And from Donald Trump, I think we heard, well, actually, he didn't even talk about his tariffs. I think that's been his major proposal: tariffs and more tax giveaways for the super wealthy. That's not going to get us so far. I mean, for a long time, we've seen both Democrats and Republicans rely on trickle-down economics, and generally the tax breaks are passed by the Republicans, but then they are maintained. Obama wrote into permanent law, actually, the Bush tax cuts, for example. So we've seen an incredible decrease in the contributions paid by the wealthiest Americans to our economy and to our public infrastructure. Their tax contribution has absolutely plummeted, while the services are basically being cut and the public domains are all being privatized. Our roads and bridges and public spaces and so on are all getting privatized and developed and bought out from under us. at the same time that we're seeing, austerity applied to the likes of support for our schools, support for higher education. So let me again go to some of the solutions that we are putting on the table. And I'll just mention the fact that this is a debate between the parties of War and Wall Street, who agree with each other on the fundamentals of our economy and on the fundamentals of our foreign policy, basically a foreign policy based on endless war. And the endless war machine, which then in turn costs half of our congressional budget. We're spending down 50% of our congressional budget just to look at the Pentagon's expenditures. But then if you add in the costs of caring for veterans, which we do not do enough of, and so many veterans are basically up a creek without housing, without jobs, without mental health care, and so on. If you include those costs as well as the costs of nuclear weapons, which are classified separately from the Pentagon budget, if you include the costs of the security agencies like the CIA, which is carrying out its own, military agenda, then it's more like 60%, even 65% of our tax dollars and of the congressional budget, which are being spent on this endless war machine. These are the fundamentals that we're absolutely missing in action from this debate because the two parties agree on it. And again, I want to stress that our campaign is the one anti-war, anti-genocide, climate emergency, pro-worker campaign, which is on the ballot across the country, that's in this election and which has the capacity to actually challenge empire. In which you have to be on the ballot across the country in order to do. And we are in the process of doing that. Again, I want to encourage everybody to go to jillstein2024.com and to join the uprising, because Americans are in an uprising. And we heard Donald Trump tonight kind of, going off the deep end as usual, mostly bashing immigrants, and trying to attribute the problems of the country to migration, when in fact migration itself is a crisis caused by the foreign policies of this country, by the endless wars and the regime change operations all around the world, by the economic takeover, by corporate capture of foreign economies and resources and labor, and as well as climate change, which has displaced millions of farmers. We've overthrown, for example, the government of Haiti innumerable times, but particularly twice under Aristide, leading to the incredible economic despair, which is driving people here to our shores. Likewise, Guatemala, most of the countries of South America actually have been overthrown by either by the CIA, or we have strong-armed their governments and installed dictators and contributed to civil wars. Guatemala is, kind of the first case in point where we overthrew their democratically elected socialist government that was going to redistribute land so that peasants could actually have a fighting chance. And at the behest of United Fruit, we overthrew the government of Guatemala, leading to essentially generations of conflict and strife. And
so one of the things I wanted to bring out here is I'm actually glad that she brought out the actual root causes of undocumented immigrants coming to the country, because Donald Trump and Kamala Harris would never actually bring that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that question was, and the question that got in the debate was specifically about the source of the immigration problem. And neither of them, like you said, answered it. But Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, answered it very clearly, very thoroughly. And it's in the realm of her control of an executive branch if she were to win the presidency.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I mean, all you have to do is just, for instance, stop the sanctions and the embargoes, and also just let these countries do their thing on their own without trying to influence their countries.
Yep.
death squads, which have been trained by the U.S. and so on. So that migration crisis that Donald Trump loves to, endlessly bash immigrants over is basically a consequence of U.S. foreign policy, which is driving people to our shores for refuge. And sadly, we see the Democrats who at one time stood up for principles of justice for immigrants, for addressing the underlying drivers. We don't hear about that anymore at all. We see the Democrats, Barack Obama was the deporter in chief. We're looking at Kamala Harris promoting an even more right-wing so-called border security bill. Border security is not obtained through a wall. Border security is achieved by, number one, decompressing the migration crisis by eliminating the drivers of that migration crisis. We can do that. Also, the war on drugs, I must mention, which is what empowers the violent drug cartels. That's why people are fleeing here from the drug cartels. And no, it's not the migrants who are bringing drugs across our border. It is plain old red-blooded Americans who are bringing the drugs and the fentanyl and so on across our border.
Ooh, that's true though. Man, boy, yeah.
He's on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people who were born in this country that are going across the border as mules to bring that stuff over here.
Yeah. And we all know that the CIA helped fund and build up various cartels in South America. The Guadalajara, specifically in Mexico, was funded by the CIA, and they evolved into an even larger cartel afterwards.
Yep. And you guys are not going to like me for this, but I have to be up at 4:30 in the morning, and it's midnight. So what I have to do is I'm going to put the link to the rest of the speech in the chat, this response, so that you guys can give it a look. And I'm going to have to listen to the rest of it while I'm at dialysis in the morning, because unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to finish it up because, well, I got to be up in 4.5 hours from now. So, but with that being said, she was already starting to cook. I want to hear, what is your biggest hope for the rest of this speech by Dr. Jill Stein? What are you hoping to hear her further say in her response?
I hoped for her to continue speaking on the foreign policy aspect, because that is within the realm of her control. And then talking about her, the domestic issues and an actual plan to get some of those about. Because I mean, we have very good critique on how these executive runners claim they want to do all this domestic stuff that isn't within their power. And, that same scrutiny would be held to Jill Stein. So I do hope that if she does talk about domestic policy, that she can talk about an actual plan that to utilize or to circumvent the system at hand to bring those about. Just a clear, coherent plan of dealing with foreign policy, for one, and then how to bring about a good domestic change in the country.
Yeah. One of the things I'm actually hoping for is more speaking about the domestic policies, because I put the link to her platform in the chat for all of you who are not aware of Dr. Jill Stein's platform. I'm gonna be honest with you, her platform is actually very solid. One thing I would like from her more of is to talk about all the policies that she has in her platform. Like, for instance, one policy that I never hear from the Democrat or Republican Party is that for all of the banks that are too big to fail, nationalize it. So no longer is too big to fail. Because now if it's nationalized, if the people own it, then guess what? They don't ever have to worry about having a bank that's too big to fail anymore.
Yeah, they have the proof in public banking working with the state of North Dakota.
Yep. Also, one of the policies under Joe Stein is also pushing for more worker co-ops, meaning that you as a worker get the ability to own the workplace that you work at and operate it democratically with your other fellow worker owners. And then when it comes to the profits that are made by that business, it's shared among the workers, and you guys democratically choose how that happens. So wouldn't that be something? And also, at the very least, a single-payer healthcare system.
Right.
Right.
Bare
and
minimum.
Also, if immigration is your biggest concern, well, then if we're ending the embargoes, the sanctions, and ending the drug war in these countries, then guess what? That's going to curb undocumented immigrants from coming in, because they're going to have a better system at home and they're not going to want to leave.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, there's a lot more. So yes, look, I just want to thank you for joining me for this. This was a long night.
Hey man, I appreciate you for having me on. You know, nobody better I would want to be in this this torture with than you.
Oh, this was crazy. Yo, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are ridiculous, man. I just hope more people realize and see what we see, as they just are flat out of their minds when it comes. And plus, they don't really actually care about the workers, because they'll just throw red meat to their base or blue meat, you know, what have you. And, you know, when it comes to actual policies that will actually help us in order to improve, they won't even, you know, answer questions. So
I feel the same way, and about Black voters specifically. I mean, our political power has been squandered for decades, and this debate was so clear, that neither of these parties have anything for us. Even in the question about racial stuff, that was perfect for one of them to talk about some sort of Black agenda, and of course, neither of them brought that up. They don't care about us. They don't.
Yep.
We need to leave.
Yep, absolutely. And just for anybody that's Black, especially freedmen, American descendant of slave, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris do not have a reparations platform. They do not have a Black agenda, as far as I have seen. But Dr. Jill Stein has reparations on her platform for lineage-based cash reparations. So if you guys get a chance, go ahead and take a look through her platform. You're going to see a big chunk of that platform dedicated to reparations for freedmen. So go ahead and take a look, because we need that too. So thank you very much for that. So as far as that's concerned, I just want to give a big shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. Thank you so very much. Let's go into, nope, that's not what I want. Let me just give a shout out to the new patrons. I gave a shout out to them earlier today, but I just want to make sure that I get them again. So thank you very much to patrons. And here are the tiers: Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And thank you to new members, Noah Leon and Borican Libre. Thank you so very much for literally keeping the lights on in his house. And just to let you guys know, I am demonetized. So if you would like to support the channel, you can support it via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you very much for that. All right. So Stay tuned. I have a clip coming out tomorrow from earlier's live stream. This special will not be clipped. I ain't doing all that work. I am exhausted. So get in where you fit in. But yes, the regular stream is clipped for the most part. So you guys will see that. Any last words, Katie?
Man, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you for inspiring me to not only get into the space of journalism, but also the space of being active in the community. Can't thank you enough, man. You're a true inspiration, and I want you to know that you inspire me and many others, man. So keep up the great work.
Thank you so very much. And just to let you guys know, as Katie and I are on our way out, I just want to share this as well. If you guys have not, you guys need to subscribe to Katie's Substack, the Chronicles for Black Political Power. So yes, Katie does write these beautiful articles that actually are deep and very thoughtful and full of substance. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to this as well. I put the link into the chat as well, so you guys can get on Substack and follow Katie Lewis as well. As you can see, he's doing great work out there, and thank you. Keep up the great work, comrade. I appreciate you so much. And look, I'll see you in the next one.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. So everybody, look, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, do all the things if you got them, and leave the world better than you found them. Because guess what? Kamala Harris and Donald Trump won't. But we got a third party options out there that will. So thank you very much for everybody. And all the way, forehead kisses, because that's the kind of man I am. I'm gonna give every single one of y'all forehead kisses. I don't care. And don't you wipe that forehead kiss off. I see y'all in the back there. All right. Deuces, Bruce. Thank you so very much for watching my channel. And I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.